We want to get to the latest in what's going on with politics and the election as we continue to have President Trump not accept the results and throw up legal challenges in various states. I want to invite in Tom Perez. He is the chair of the Democratic National Committee and obviously Vice President or President-elect, Joe Biden. Have to get more used to saying that, Tom, has been embarking on his transition plans, but at the same time is not getting that full cooperation from a transition team in Washington, D.C. itself. I do want to ask you, Tom, as you do sort of the post-mortem at the DNC of this election, yes, you eked out a win in the presidency. On the congressional side, however, it was more challenging. You lost House seats. You now have the Senate runoff that you're facing. What are some of the lessons perhaps learned, and what can the DNC maybe do better going forward to get a more solid result?
Well, with all due respect, I'd like to correct something you just said. Eked out a victory. Let's go back, presidential elections dating back to Harry Truman. Better than Harry Truman, better than John F. Kennedy, better than Richard Nixon in '68, better than Ronald Reagan, better than so many other elections. This is a solid victory. His margin, the president-elect's margin, is going to end up being roughly where Barack Obama was in 2012. We count votes differently, so the sequencing of the victory is different from past elections because we had a lot of vote-by-mail elections. But make no mistake about it, it was a decisive victory. I look at where we are now versus where we were 4 years ago. 4 years ago, we had 15 Democratic governors. Now we have 24. We now have the U.S. House. Yes, we lost 6 or 7 seats, and we never want to lose seats. They were all in districts that Trump won by double-digit margins in 2016, New Mexico, Oklahoma, to use 2 examples. And we have a runoff coming up in Georgia. So I think we made pretty good progress. We've won over 400 seats in state legislatures over the last 4 years. We've flipped, I think, now 10 legislative chambers from red to blue. Have we defeated Trumpism? We still have work to do on that. But this was a decisive victory, notwithstanding the president's continuing efforts to stoke fear and division. This was a decisive victory. And what I appreciate in the past is, Republican and Democratic presidents in transition have always understood the importance of having smooth transitions, whether it was George W. Bush in '08. I remember that one well because I worked on the Obama transition. Whether it was Jimmy Carter when he lost in 1980, he said to Ronald Reagan, "I want this to be the smoothest transition in American history." That's the professionalism that we should have during transitions. Unfortunately, that's not the case at the moment. And I applaud the Republicans like George W. Bush and Susan Collins and others who've acknowledged the reality that Joe Biden is the president-elect. We're going to continue to forge ahead, though, because the American people want progress. They voted for progress. And you see Joe Biden doing just that. With the coronavirus task force that he appointed yesterday, he'll be talking about healthcare today because healthcare is on the docket of the Supreme Court. This unprecedented continuing attacks on the Affordable Care Act, really just senseless attacks in the middle of a pandemic. And this is what the American people want, is results.
And Tom, I guess when you think about the future of healthcare then in America, there's, I think because we are in a pandemic, questions about what a unified Democratic Party platform would be in terms of how you would like to see healthcare carried out in this country. I think Joe Biden expected that he would be very much in favor of shoring up what Trump tried to undo as with respect to Obamacare. Now, other members of your party are going to be in favor of a Medicare for all type option. Where would you say that the Democratic Party right now stands on let's say its baseline view on how to get each American healthcare coverage?
I think we're going to continue to work off of the platform, which is a very bold platform. And the platform is talking about taking the baseline of Obamacare and building off of it, establishing a public option, taking steps to reduce the cost of prescription drugs. Again, 20 million people got access to health care as a result of Obamacare. That's incredible progress, notwithstanding the efforts over the last 4 years to whittle away at Obamacare. Over 100 million people with pre-existing conditions don't have to worry about how they're going to keep their insurance. And these are really important things. And what Joe Biden is going to do, and what our platform reflects as a party, is we're going to build off of that and continue the unmistakable move to make sure that everybody has access to health care. Because the fundamental value proposition of Democrats is that health care should be a right for all and not a privilege for a few.
Tom, why do you think a President Joe Biden could get through a public option with a Republican-controlled Senate?
Well, we don't know who's going to control the Senate yet. So we've got elections coming up in Georgia in early January, and we're going to keep fighting. That's what the American people want. They voted clearly in 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020. Healthcare was on the ballot all of those years. You all have studied polling after elections. The notion that in the middle of a pandemic, we're going to do away with people's access to healthcare. That is crazy at any point, but that is really ludicrous in the middle of a pandemic where so many people have lost their jobs and by extension, their healthcare, because as you know, tens of millions of people have their healthcare tied to their employment. And so we're going to keep forging ahead because this is what the American people want. And we will start in the House moving forward, and we will work hard to, we're not going to need a lot of Republican help, but we'll continue to work hard to get whatever is necessary. And what is clear is the American people will know this is what Democrats are fighting for, and this is what Republicans are fighting against.
Tom, talk to me a little bit about the ground strategy in Georgia for this runoff election, because certainly on the GOP side, there is a lot of attempt to sort of stir up the base, if you will, and get people out for that runoff election. And runoffs turnout tends to be lower. So walk me through what you all are planning.
Well, we had 67% turnout in Georgia in the presidential election. That is a record. You look at the formula for success for the president-elect. It was a fusion coalition. You had so many people. We expanded the electorate, 1 million more people than 2016 who were part of the electorate. You look at young people, roughly 20% increase in turnout from young people 18 to 21. And you look at that fusion coalition, you see tremendous increases in turnout in communities of color, for instance. And this fusion coalition allowed us to win, albeit a narrow victory, but a historic victory. It's been a long, long time since a Democrat has taken Georgia in the presidential. And we're going to continue to expand the electorate moving forward. The energy is unmistakable down in Georgia, and everyone is going to summon their inner John Lewis moving forward. I take my hat off to Stacey Abrams and others who have spent so much time in the run-up to 2018 and then again in the run-up to 2020, registering voters, making sure that voters who hadn't participated in the past are participating now. That's the formula for success. And we are continuing that work to not only expand the electorate, but to make sure that everyone gets out there and votes. John Lewis said the right to vote is the most impactful, nonviolent tool we have to build a more perfect union. And people saw that in Georgia, and the president-elect's victory there is a tribute to that. Now we've got to continue the momentum moving into January. That's exactly what we're going to do.
And Tom, I want to ask a question about polling you referenced earlier. In your work, were the polls as off as I think maybe is popularly conceived? And I would also ask, is it really just the way the media has discussed the polling that confuses folks to believe that there is some major error out there, or is the margins that you guys saw across the electorate, across these various states, sort of more in line with what your internals had suggested could happen on Election Day?
Well, when I was asked about the election repeatedly in the run-up to the election, and I would always say, don't get on the roller coaster. And I would tell people, this election is going to be close, especially in the battleground states. I didn't really pay much attention to national polls because, as you know, elections for president are one state at a time. And when you look at the battleground polling, the battleground state polling, it was in most cases pretty darn close. And so we never for a moment thought that Joe Biden was going to win Wisconsin or Pennsylvania or Michigan by the double-digit margins that you saw in a couple national polls, which I frankly had never believed those national polls. So, for us, we always had our head down. We always knew that we needed to organize early and everywhere in all of these battleground states. And I think the work we put into it, I look at where we started organizing in so many of these states, frankly, dating back to 2017. And what I think we've been able to do with the vice president and now the president-elect, and also just the democratic ecosystem, is understand that we have to organize every year, everywhere. I look at Arizona, the work that was done in the run-up to the 2018 cycle, which helped Kyrsten Sinema win that Senate seat and helped us elect a Democratic Secretary of State in Arizona. That work was work that we then built on. When you till the soil every year, it really gives you longer term results because you're building relationships with voters. All politics is personal. And if you just show up every fourth year for 4 months, you're not going to succeed. And we've been able to build these relationships and sustain these relationships. And people know what we're fighting for. And again, healthcare has been the number one issue across America for the last 4 years. And that has really, that's really showed in how we've been able to succeed.
Tom, thanks for spending some time with us. Tom Perez is chair of the Democratic National Committee. Thank you.
My pleasure. Have a nice day.